it never made sense to me. If this is America's game, why is it only that way for men, right? And I know for myself and other women who played the game like 20 years ago, it was like, if we can do this, if we can play this game and do it the right way, can't we not only change the game, but shift culture by playing the game of football?
Hello, and welcome to About Time, the show where we have long overdue conversations about the journey of women in sports. I'm Marky Freeman, athlete, author, fan of sports, and an even bigger fan of the women who are changing them. In this episode, we'll be talking all things connection, culture, and sports. Dr. Welter at just 5'3", she is a giant and a force in the sports world. We had a lot of fun having this conversation, and it's one I think that you will all enjoy. This interview is brought to you by WeCoach. Prior to Title IX, over 90% of women collegiate sports teams were coached by women. Today, over 50 years later, that number has decreased to 41%. That's why WeCoach launched Move the Numbers to help change the landscape for women coaches and the student athletes they lead. WeCoach is a one-of-a-kind nonprofit membership organization dedicated to recruiting, advancing, or retaining women coaches in all sports and levels through year-round professional growth and leadership development programs. WeCoach fosters a diverse and inclusive community of over 10,000 coaching leaders who inspire young women to follow in their footsteps. If she can see her, she can be her. Together, we move the numbers to support and increase women in coaching. We teach, we inspire, we motivate, we lead, we coach. Visit our website at wecoachsports.org. That's wecoachsports.org. She holds the distinction of being the first woman to coach in the NFL. Her journey also includes a successful run as a professional football player, earning multiple gold medals and a PhD in psychology. Beyond her accomplishments, she remains a dedicated advocate for gender equality in sports. Please welcome Dr. Jen Welter.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jen Welter, and it's about time we women get to kick glass and take names.
Let's just talk about football for a moment. Not something that's common amongst girls or women. And it's becoming more popular today, but some may even say that 20 years ago it was somewhat non-existent. Where did your love for the game begin?
Well, you're right when you say that about football. We've often referred to football as the final frontier for women in sports. And I know for me, I took that as a challenge, right? I took that personally. Like, this is the game that took over Sundays, right? The church and football fight for Sundays, right? It's taking place in Thanksgiving. It's that sport that has really infused culture in America, but for men. And so it never made sense to me. If this is America's game, why is it only that way for men, right? And I know for myself and other women who played the game like 20 years ago, it was like, if we can do this, if we can play this game and do it the right way, can't we not only change the game, but shift culture by playing the game of football? Because that shift had to happen. You ask where I got the love. Well, I got it the same way as all the boys do, right? Vero Beach, Florida is Friday Night Lights. Like, you look down, and I just remember thinking that football players looked like superheroes. And I wanted to be a superhero. And it was the first place in the world that somebody told me, boys can do that, girls can't. And I just remember thinking, but why? This is the game everybody loves. Why can't I play? And so I think that same question of why can't I play has kind of driven me to say, you know what? I can play. We're going to do it the right way. And as we do this, it will shift the culture of what girls are capable of.
Shifting the culture is something that you have definitely done, taking it personally, accepting it as a challenge clearly, because you are the first to do so many things. You're the very first woman to play in a men's professional football league as a running back. You're the very first female to coach in the NFL. You are the first to serve as a defensive specialist in the AFF. You're the first female to coach in the XFL. And the list goes on and on and on and on. And you've inspired so many to be the first, to be different, to be the only one. What types of challenges did you face as the first, as the only, as the different, and how did you overcome those challenges as well?
Well, first, I'm glad that you said only, because I tell people all the time, we glorify firsts. We really do. And it is important, because until you have a first, you can't have a second. You can't have a third. You can't have a fourth, right? You can't make a new normal without a first. But being first does inherently mean only, which means you have a sample set of one and you're a divisive person by nature. Because if somebody likes the status quo, they don't like you. They don't like the idea of you. They might not even know you. And I've had that many times. They just don't like the idea of you because they don't like change. So that means, I think the biggest problem is that no one's neutral, right? It is not even usually shades of gray. It's like a black or white answer. It's a yes or no, right? You are a champion to some and you're a villain to others. Just like, coaching or playing while female. It's commonly known that teams don't want a distraction. Well, you even being there can be a distraction. So then when you are a topic or invited into the conversation, you've got to make sure that the conversation isn't just about you, right? It's about what can we do because of this? And how, as a first, do you ensure you're not the last? Because we hear it glorified. Like, a lot of people say first, not last. And I kind of look at them and I'm like, do you know what that means? It's to ensure that your existence isn't just a one-off and it sparks a conversation and becomes a part of a movement. And with that, it's not just what you do. It then really is an identity thing of, who I am, because what I do and who I am have become intertwined because it represents something bigger to so many people. And I know at times that's been one of the hardest things in my life, right? There are things that I would take back. There are things that I'm like, man, I could have done that better, or I maybe shouldn't have said that, or I didn't do the right thing, but there's also no roadmap. And so there wasn't necessarily somebody that was there and was like, Jen, hey, do this, don't do that, right? There wasn't really mentorship. So at the same time, I have to be open, be an advocate, and also be honest that sometimes I have as many questions as I do answers. And that's something that I think not only for me as being a first, but we as women aren't always told that we can do, right? It's kind of like, she's got to do everything he does backwards and in heels, right? We're expected to be all things to all people and never admit fear and weakness like athletes. But as women, we're supposed to hold it all together because we know there aren't that many women in the conversations and in the rooms.
And for the women, for the listeners right now that are the first, the only, or the different ones, how do you advocate in a space where there is no blueprint, there is no roadmap? How do you stand tall?
Yeah, I think the first thing is great advice I got from Terry Glenn, who was with me when I was coaching for the Texas Revolution, right? In indoor football. It was my first coaching position, and he knew I was going to the NFL. And TG said, he was like, the best advice I can give you is to be 100% authentic. He said, if you are the same person that you were here with us every single day, those guys will absolutely love you. But if you're fake, they'll eat you alive. And so at every point when I was like, ooh, I'm not exactly sure, I would just go back to that advice because, I wasn't going to be able to be one of the guys, but they had enough guys. They didn't need me to outman a man at being a man. They had enough men. They needed me. And, sometimes people are like, oh, well, you don't look like a football player. You don't look like a coach. I'm like, but how many women do you know who play football? Because now a lot of them do look like me, right? And a lot of the girls, they look like me because I gave them permission to look like me. Yeah, you can have pink hair and go out there and rock the football field. Yeah, you can have nails. Yeah, you can, bring your own style to the football field. Why not? Because nobody's written the rules for us yet. But if you just think that you're going to be able to be someone else, what they'll sense is that you're phony. And the other thing is to realize that you're going to need advocates, because if you're the only girl, it's not you versus them. It's us versus the world, because we actually have a standard to set. And, some of the guys taught me that. They really did.
You mentioned authenticity and not outmanning a man. I've never heard it articulated that way, but beautifully said. You also mentioned that part of your responsibility in being the first is making sure that you're not the last. And you're doing that right now with Grrridiron Girls, something that you've been doing for quite a while. You've hosted over 30 camps, which is funded mostly by you, right? And the focus is building confidence through football. And you're teaching those girls that, hey, you belong on any field, in every field. And I think that is a life lesson as well as a lesson in the game of football. Why was building that program so important to you?
I remember when I was with the Cardinals, I had so many girls reach out and say, thank you for letting me know that I wasn't wrong for loving football. Yeah. And, it wasn't like I was the only one who loved football, but so many times at that time, it was like there was one girl, right? Whether it was one female coach or one female football player. And so there were these ones, but they didn't know each other. And they found like a common connection through me. And I remember I had an opportunity to actually launch NFL Play 60 in Canada. And it was a woman named Tammy Johnson. And it was her idea, because to have me be the spokesperson and have different guys in every city, because she said, I want the girls to know it's for them too. And I started paying attention to that, because she really taught me how important it was for the girls to see that. Because if I'd go to a co-ed camp, and at that time, a lot of camps would say they were co-ed, and you would get 2 to 4 girls out of 200, which meant we had 1 to 2%. And those were the brave girls. And a lot of the times, I would get calls from guys, they'd be like, Coach, we got one. I'm like, got one what? They're like, a girl. What do I do? And I'm like, coach her. Right? But what I realized was, because the boys were being socialized differently than the girls, even as simple as just going around and throwing a football in the backyard, that when those brave girls got to what was even a fundamentals camp, they were still fundamentally behind. And so often it wouldn't be a great safe space for them, because it would be like, oh, you throw like a girl or you catch like a girl. That's not actually a thing. You don't catch like a girl. You don't throw like a girl. You've either been taught to catch and to throw, or you haven't. But so often we throw that like a girl phrase in there. And so what I decided is I was going to start something, and why I say confidence through football, and teaching them there's no game you cannot play and no field you do not belong in or on, is that I was going to take this one particular place and space known as the final frontier for girls and women in sports, and teach the girls the fundamentals, so that even if they never wanted to play again, they could. And if they decided it wasn't for them, someone else didn't decide it for them. And I was going to make sure that they could go into street ball or another camp or into phys ed or whatever field they wanted, and they knew all of the fundamentals, so that they could confidently go there. And I could give them a piece of not only my knowledge, but the attitude that helped me do that. And there wasn't a national movement for girls in flag at that time. We're seeing it now, but this was 2017. I actually had the opportunity to teach the class to NFL flag on how Grrridiron Girls was so successful and why it was so important to create this place and space for girls. And now it's exploding. It's one of the fastest growing sports in the country. It's become a varsity high school sport in more and more states, and more are going to add. You can now get a college scholarship to play girls flag football in the NAIA or NJCAA, which means you can change the trajectory of your life through football. And just years ago, it wasn't even possible. And so for me, Grrridiron Girls was like, if I don't do this, then the wrong woman was the first female coach in the NFL. If I can't give that to these other girls, then someone else should have done it. You know, gridiron means so much more. It's actually what they call football in Australia, which I was the first female head coach of the Australian women's national team. And it's also such a mentality, right? It means so much more. It's like a proving ground. It's this place and space. And I'll tell you what, the girls who have come through Grrridiron Girls, like I could not be more proud. We have some of the top girls in the country now who proudly claim that they're Grrridiron Girls.
Wow, that's so exciting. And I mean, the hairs on my arms, my neck, is just standing up to hear your passion for it. And also to see and hear how a ripple, just a simple ripple, can create the most powerful wave and movement. Absolutely beautiful. Now, you have had a well-decorated career, 14 years in the Professional Women's Football League, 4 national championships, 2 gold medals as a participant with Team USA. Why? You could have stopped there. You could have stopped there, Jen. But you decided to coach. Why in the NFL?
Well, first, let me say it this way. And this is part of the reason why I think representation is so important. I never dreamed that coaching was possible because I couldn't look at the sidelines and say, I want to be her. And now with not only me, but all of the women who are currently coaching, girls can see that there's a future for them in football, which means they can do the same work that the boys do. And, you know, we're not limited by what has been in the past. The girls now are going to continue to go further than I ever did and that I ever dreamt possible because they get those dreams and they get them early. Funny enough, the way I got into coaching was through the men's game, right? And I was outspoken my whole career. People would ask me like, Jen, you've been playing football for so long. You know, what are you trying to do? Like, you know, play in the NFL. And I would laugh. I'm like, listen, I am 5'2", 130 pounds, and I'm not crazy. I would never, and I said never, very big and very often. So God has a great sense of irony, right? Like, I would never play pro football against men. Until I did. And even that, to be perfectly honest, like I said, was a never for me. It was playing on the team with those men. Funny enough, you know, I'm on practice squad for most of the time and I would see it, right? Like I was on the sidelines. I'm like, hey, next time do this, or they're trying to do that. And the guys would joke. They're like, she's like our little coach on the sidelines. And I'm like, yeah, aren't you funny? I get to take all of this here and put it in your big body. Isn't that cool? And I don't even have to get hit with it, right? Like it was an easy, fluid conversation that we had, but it wasn't serious. I was like, yeah, maybe I will do that. The next year, we got a new head coach. His name is Wendell Davis, former Dallas Cowboy. And Wendell walked into an event. He was in there with some of the Revolution guys. And I walked in and, you know, we hadn't seen each other. We're teammates. They picked me up, tossed me around like a football because relative to that, I am one, you know, and it was attention. Wow. He said, who is this girl that all my guys love? And the defense coordinator knew me and he was like, Coach, that's your running back. And he was blown away, calls me over, grills me on football. What's good, what's not, boom, boom, boom. And I thought I was done. Like full disclosure, I survived a year getting hit by those guys every day. I'm not doing that again, right? That 1 year aged me dog years. I'm not making it for season 2, right? And so I was like, you know, I'm going to leave this place better than I found it. And I'm going to look out for my teammates and I'm going to tell this coach what he needs to know. And the next day he called me and he said, all my defensive coordinator and I could talk about is how you have to coach this football team. And I said, no. He goes, what do you mean no? No, girls don't coach football. He said, not a lot of guys are going to give you this opportunity. You're taking this job. And I said no, and I hung up on it. And The next day, he called me back and told me about myself. He said, do you remember how I told you not a lot of guys were going to give you this opportunity and we're taking this job? I said, yeah. He said, good. I took it for you. You're coaching me and you can't quit. Otherwise, the entire narrative surrounding women coaching in men's pro football will be, we had a girl once and she quit. Really?
Pressure?
Pressure.
Just a bit.
Just a bit. But it wasn't me saying, I'm going to knock this door down. It was him seeing something in me. And I was like, but I don't coach football. And he said, I can teach you how to coach football. I can't teach what I saw last night. Those guys love you and they listen to you. And he was like, that's special. That level of respect is special. I can teach you X's and O's. People learn all the time, right? And so end up coaching that whole season. And then the reason why it's so important for one woman to kick glass is it gives permission to other women to kick glass. And, you know, you could start hearing shatters all over the place. Because when Sarah Thomas got hired as the first full-time female ref in NFL history, a reporter asked Bruce Arians if he could ever see a woman coaching in the NFL. And his answer was, the second a woman proves that she could make these guys better, she'll be hired.
Wow.
So after talking to my head coach, I called the Cardinals on behalf of myself as if I wasn't myself. I mean, I might have been an assistant coach, but I really just said assistant. And my head coach wanted to talk to their head coach. And I apparently was very convincing because I eventually worked my way to BA's assistant. And about 2 weeks later, I walk into practice and my head coach, who was already a large man, was larger than life. And he said, you'll never guess who I talked to yesterday. It was Bruce Arians. And he said, tell me about this girl. So it was not this grand master plan of, I'm going to break this final barrier in sports, the glass sideline, like all of this. No. It was, you know, stepping up to opportunities as they came. And thankfully, you know, I was a little bolder when it came to the NFL than my first job, but I was already doing it then. So.
My goodness.
That's why.
My goodness. I love the term kicking glass too. Absolutely love it. So just curious, like, how did you approach nurturing culture and building respect and empowering players once you did get to the Arizona Cardinals amongst players and coaches as well?
Well, you know, first of all, there was a guy named Daryl Drake who was a receivers coach there. Unfortunately, Coach Drake has passed away at this point, but you know, he really empowered me. And I don't even know how much, if he would have known how much it meant at that time. But, you know, when it's day one and, you know, BA says, you know, go meet the other coaches, this, that, and the other. And he's like, Doc, come in here. It's like, okay. And he was like, guess what? I'm old. Okay. I'm no more football than you. Good talk. In fact, I've probably forgotten more football than you will have ever known in your young life, right? And I was like, great, this is awesome for my confidence. And he said, there's something that you have that none of us dudes have. And he goes, it's that PhD. He said, I'm going to tell you something. I need you to lean into that because none of us have it. And I'm going to use it. He said, I used to be one of those guys who thought it was just the X's and the O's and, you know, don't give me any of that stuff. And he goes, then when I was in Chicago, I had a player, his name's Brandon Marshall. And Brandon Marshall made me realize that there was more than just X's and O's. And I had to learn how to be a better coach for him. And if you'd have been there, you know, when we were there, it would have been a huge help. So I need you to bring that into everything that you do. And I don't know that I wouldn't have, because that's not really my style, but to have had a coach on the first day, say that's special, that adds value to us, I was just like, okay. I tell people all the time, find your allies where they are. He was one of those people right off the jump. I've never been here before. Okay. I don't know what they need. So I'm going to let them coach me, right? Whether it be the other coaches coaching me where I can be useful, whether it's players telling me what they need or looking at the situation, I first got to be coachable, right? You cannot coach if you're not coachable. That's thing one. And then number two, it's within that, it's getting to really know the players. And I think that a great coach-athlete relationship is one that's founded on trust and love, right? It really is. First, I've got to love you as a person, right? Like love of the game, yes, but like care about you as a person, and then develop a relationship on trust. And trust in coaching to me is that you trust that I'm going to give you the best that I have. Now, doesn't mean that that's perfect. I always say you can be perfect in intention and constantly improving on execution, as long as you know that you trust that I'm always going to give you the best that I have, right? But I could have imperfect information. We did a scouting report. We watched X, Y, and Z. They ran a play that we've never seen before. I gave you the best that I had. And guess what? We're going to constantly improve based on the trust that you're going to do what I ask you to do. And I'm going to give you the best that I have. And we have the relationship where we can constantly improve together. Having a relationship that highlights or emphasizes players as people, to me, is very simple. They look like superheroes, right? They've got pads and helmet, and they don't look like they should be human like the rest of us, but they are. And underneath the helmet and the pads, you have young men, and we are all very human. And a lot of the times, the challenges that we have, especially as you level up, are not necessarily physical. Everybody can physically do it, right? You telling me that 0.001 on a 40 time is going to determine whether or not you can play this game? It's not. But how you translate the other elements of your life, and can you focus when you get in the door, those are very human problems. And so to me, it might be something as simple as this, right? Like, let's say I know you and I've seen you do X, and you're usually, you're bang on, like you're 9 out of 10. And today you're 6 out of 10. Your performance showed me that something is off. And most of us are so hard on ourselves. I know I am. And if then a coach jumps on me and says, "What's wrong with you?" That's not your performance. That's you as a person. So instead of "What's wrong with you?" my question would be like, "Hey, are you okay? Do you need a minute?" And a minute would be, like we do that on the field. It means you might need a play off, right? You see players tap their helmet. But to me, a minute between a coach and an athlete means like, if you need to talk, I've always got a minute. Because until we deal with that, your mind is there. So making sure that we really get to know each other, and then ups and downs are safe spaces, not problems. If you'll trust me enough to bring me into that world, it then becomes very easy to say, okay, when they do this and they slant the line, I need to make sure you get to heel depth and squeeze. That stuff becomes very natural because we have a relationship built on trust and love, and one that goes beyond the white lines.
Yeah, that's remarkable. Obviously, with a PhD in sports psychology with an emphasis in communication between players and coaches, beautifully said and studied, obviously. But how are you able to identify that? How are you able to identify that in your players, for the listeners on this call, for the coaches who are tuning in? Because it does affect their ability to play on the field as well.
Building in time where a relationship is possible is important. It might be eating lunch with your players. I know as coaches, a lot of the times we'll all be around our own table. Well, you're not going to get to know your players that way. One of the ways that you can really start a great conversation with players is pay attention to tattoos. every tattoo tells a story. So rather than seeing a tattoo as an indicator of like rebellion, why not realize it was a story that they were so committed to, they put it on their skin?
You know, one common phrase in the sports world is people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. But a genism that I also love is your ability to teach is contingent upon your ability to reach, which is beautiful. And it starts with the human being, which is something you made mention to earlier as well. There's a really important question that I think our listeners would appreciate, and I sure would as well, just around that connection between the player and coach. But also, like, how have the differences in leadership styles between male-dominated sports like football and sports with more of a female representation influenced the team dynamic and communication?
Empathy is a leadership trait, period. Empathy is not relegated to women. Now, it is a lot of the times how we lead, but I went to business school and I read all those leadership books, and none of them told me that empathy was a leadership trait. It was very autocratic. It was very top down. And I remember being so frustrated and thinking, well, maybe I'm not a leader then, because that's not me. And I remember thinking that there had to be a better way. I can ask you to do something on the football field and then care about you as a human too, right? Like things aren't mutually exclusive. People would ask me, and this would always crack me up, how did you command the respect of the players in the NFL? And I'd be like, command. You don't command respect. You earn respect. People, if you command respect, certain people will do it because they respect the position. Whereas when you earn somebody's respect, you also encourage their voice. And I think that's to me, the big difference. And I don't believe that has to be specifically male or female. I think we do, both men and women, a disservice by saying that being a good human, a good listener, a good person is, she did that because she was a woman. But if you have different types of personalities within a team dynamic, that's an advantage, because different people will find different coaches that they can relate to or talk to things about. So it doesn't have to be one size fits all.
And you were quoted saying, if football is America's game, why is it the one sport that doesn't have parity at any level from Pee Wee to the pros? That feeling kept me going in a place that had yet to create opportunities for women. It's like, can't we shift the culture and show women belong on every field and play any game we want to? That's a very powerful statement coming from you, a woman who has done it all at all levels. How do we shift from where we are now in that space to where we should be?
Well, thankfully, we've gotten a little closer, right? And I think change, like, people always ask me, like, how do you feel about progress so far? And I'm like, listen, they say patience is a virtue. And clearly I lost mine because I want it all right now, right? I'm never going to say it's fast enough when women are still paying to play football and men are making millions of dollars, when girls are still getting pushed out of certain places and spaces, and it's an expectation that guys be supported. And yet we have come so far, right? I think there are now 8 full-time female coaches in the NFL. It's good. I'd rather see 32, right? But I like 8. I think 8 is great. It's better than 0. But people don't realize this, because I stay very much on the sunny side of the street, because that's how we get progress. But people don't know how hard that time was. Like, I got death threats. I got, stalkers. I had all of those things because, again, it was rocking the boat that was supposed to be never rocked, right? Like, that was the final frontier. It was the men's bastion, right? Like, if it's the final frontier for women in sports, that means it's the last safe space in the last locker room that women were not allowed to go. So if you are a patriarchy fan and you want to keep that bastion to yourself, there's a lot of hate that comes out of that, right? But we shift culture when we continue to shift mindsets. And once you see something work, you're like, well, people say, well, of course it worked. They look at Bruce Arians and they're like, of course Bruce should do that. Well, we say that. But at one time they weren't saying that. It takes brave people to be first, right? And I think what's really going to happen in American football and where we're really going to see it start to get where it's supposed to get is flag is an equalizer. It's an equalizer on so many levels. And this is why I've been pushing for it so hard and kind of doing it before it was popular. Soccer. Okay, let's go to soccer. Well, one of the reasons why soccer is a global game and American football traditionally hasn't been is the expense, right? Football, pads, and helmets are expensive. Soccer, you need a ball. Flag football, you need a ball. And it is quickly becoming a global game in every sense of the word, right? It's a global game in the fact that, you saw Team Mexico beat Team USA at the World Games in Alabama. Diana Flores is tiny. She's tiny, right? I'm sorry, but she's not doing that in tackle football. But she could be one of the best in the world in flag because the skill set is different. So you see women of all shapes, size, creed, color being able to play the game. And we'll see that in 2028 in the Olympics, more than likely. At that point, we will see this game become what it could be in terms of parity, or at least start to, because now it's an Olympic sport. So now you get resources going to it. You can't have an Olympic sport without parity, right? So it's got to be women and men. So you'll see that. Right now we have the NAIA and NJCAA both having women's varsity flag football. So meaning scholarships to change the trajectory of your life through education, through football, right? We got to get the NCAA, right? It can't just be pockets of colleges. And then we'll start to get also, I say 50-50, right? 50 states having girls flag football as a varsity sport for equality. Imagine the player that I would have been if I would have started at 4 years old, like little Kaylee Patterson, who started with me at 4 years old and is now one of the top 10 U girls in the country.
She is balling.
She is balling. And if you haven't seen Kaylee, you need to see Kaylee.
Check her out.
She and so many girls like her, and I have them across the country. I just use Kaylee because she's gone viral so many times. Like, Kaylee started at Grrridiron Girls. Kaylee is the reason for Grrridiron Girls. Kaylee and every girl like her are the reason why, right? She's my why. And I mean, I literally have video of Kaylee at 4 years old. People were like, was she a standout that day? And you wouldn't have looked at Kaylee and thought this girl is going to take over the football world, right? But she found that love that day, right? And girls that find that love early, just like boys do, will have the opportunity to take the sport throughout their life and do things with it. Like, I tell every single girl at a Grrridiron Girls camp or a camp that I get to go visit, I didn't get to play till I was 22, right? All of these firsts that you're seeing, every single one of you today is further in the game of football than I was when I was your age. So don't just follow in my footsteps. It would be selling yourself too short, right? Take the game as far as you want to take it.
Man, and seeing those young women grow individually, also seeing the sport grow collectively and getting to the Olympic level. It's about time for that. And it started with one. It started with one that has now turned into 8 and will soon, and hopefully soon enough, be 32. And then we can get to the 50-50. And so beautifully said. This is the point in the show Dr. Jen, where we go into our rapid fire questions. Now, we are going to test your poise. I know you've handled a ton of pressure being the first and the only. I know you've handled a ton of pressure being a linebacker, being a running back, being a coach. Here we go. Jen, who is your shero?
Nancy Lieberman.
Ooh, I love her. A quote you live by.
Let your game speak. Let your game speak louder than your gender, louder than your haters. And yeah, silence noise.
The greatest linebacker of all time.
Oof.
Pressure, but no pressure. A whole lot of pressure for you.
You know what? I'm going to go with Luke Kuechly. I like Ray Lewis from but then
I still do the Ray Lewis dance.
You could go outside too. I mean, gosh, that's a hard one. But Luke,
man,
I heard was brilliant. Ray Lewis is timeless. Mike Singletary, he's got the eyes. I mean, there's so many of them.
Okay. And how do you want to be remembered?
I hope I'm remembered as somebody who opened a lot of doors. I lovingly say as a football player, I took pride in being a great lead blocker. But if I'm remembered as something for the young girls, I hope it's that person who gave them the spark to believe they could do anything in football and in life.
Wow. Jen, thank you so much for joining us on the About Time podcast. You are remarkable. Your information was so insightful. You mentioned it earlier, just 5'2", 130 pounds, but a giant and a pioneer, not just in football, but I would say in the sports world and the world in general. Thank you so much for your trailblazing. We appreciate you joining us.
You got it. Thanks for having me.
Hello, About Time listeners. I'm Vanessa Fuchs, CEO of WeCoach. Our favorite holiday of the year is coming up. National Coaches Day on October 6th. And what better way to celebrate than with a video chat presented by Gatorade Performance Partner focused on methods to keep the female athlete healthy. Gatorade Performance Partner is the first multidisciplinary community of sports performance professionals dedicated to providing resources practitioners need to empower themselves and the athletes they lead. Sign up for free at performancepartner.gatorade.com. Then grab your favorite coach, your best note-taking tool, and lean in with us on October 6th as we explore the key foundations of maintaining good mental health and physical health for female athletes. Registration is live on our website, wecoachsports.org.
Well, that's our show. Thank you for listening. If you want to hear more episodes like this, be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcast and to our YouTube channel. We'll see you next time.